Welcome back to That Rugby podcast, hosted by the Sports Booth. You've got myself and Hughesy back again a little bit later in the week, but we are here. Hughesy. It's been an interesting week, I'd say, in the rugby world, especially for your Waratahs, at least.
For the Waratahs, for Australian rugby as a whole, it's going to be an interesting next period of time. We got one bit of good news. Michael Hooper, as expected, is joining the Aussie Sevens, which is really good. To have Hoop still playing rugby means he could potentially still, do whatever. He's not hanging out the boots, which is great to hear because he's got a lot of rugby left in him. And yeah, the Waratahs. Well, we'll sort of get onto what's been going on with the Waratahs. A few different things, really, in there. But look, we're past the World Cup. We're looking ahead towards Super Rugby Pacific 2024, and yeah, we're building towards that excitement.
Yeah. Squads were obviously named, and I love the way we obviously discussed this pretty heavily last year because the New Zealand teams did it like this format last time, where it was one team's getting announced, then the next, and today or this time they brought the Aussies on board and did them all in that format, which was fantastic. It builds excitement for that day. I would like to see more in that day. I would love to see, like, that was a good starting point, but I think you could have, a TV show running for 24 hours with the squads or whatever it was, like a thing, and you're getting exact reactions from fan bases, from teams, from like that.
I guess the weird thing though is that a lot of the signings that are in those team lists have been already announced.
Yep.
So you take a lot of the excitement out of it. But what you could do, and I think what you need to do is that's a day where you build a social media touch point. So you put out something like so for the NFL, they did their schedule announcements, and each team also did like a video for their own schedule announcement, and some of them were really amazing. Like the LA Chargers did like a anime style one where each of their opponents was like a different anime villain or character type thing. And I think there's a lot of creativity to be had across Australia, New Zealand, and the islands, and the potential for that kind of thing where you have a squad announcement video, not just putting the list up, but then so that way you create that social media touchstone. You could go viral. You could do whatever. Like just it's put a bit. It's a great first step, but now let's keep building from here. Like you've got the basics. Let's improve upon it from here.
I couldn't agree more. Like, I understand big signings. Maybe an announcement, the old Julian Sevilla, an announcement, but I would much rather have the general announcements of new players signing coming on that day rather than And I get it, the deals will be done and you'll have some whispers and you'll have some journalists breaking news and you'll be like, well, we could do that ourselves. But I would rather, there be rumours and then it be finalised on that day. I just think even that will build more excitement in the news,
exactly.
Like who's signing, who's not signing. And then I love your idea
what it
as
is
well.
For the NRL as well. The NRL does that. There's rumours about where they're going to sign in the next couple of years, but it's not made official until that time period.
Exactly. And I just think that could work really well for the squads, and like I said, I would love if it was running over 12 hours, a 12-hour TV show with, hey, reactions. We can go straight to the coaches. You've named the squad. Why have you named this player? Every hour, talking to each coach, talking to each team, talking to the fans. I just think that would do really well as well. And then I love your idea as well. Even with schedule releases, with squad releases, there's enough creative talent in this world to push something like that out. And it'd be really interesting to see how each team goes about it, because of course every team has their own identity, and it will really build on their identity. So look, like you said, good first step. We've got everyone now aligned that this is how this is going to happen, but how can we turn that into an actual show or an event? Is kind of
Waratahs have got Tarman. Just have Tarman, for the schedule release, battling all the different teams. When they play the Crusaders, Tarman versus a Crusader, punching a hurricane or something like that, just actually punching the wind, drop kicking a koala when they're playing the Queensland Reds, just all sorts of stuff,
Yeah, that might be blasphemy for him, but yeah. But let's have a little look into the squads. Obviously, some named there, like not I wouldn't say there's obviously some really cool names in there. Lee Halfpenny's the one that stands out at the Crusaders, getting former Welsh superstar coming down under. Where he'll play, how he'll play, will be really interesting. Obviously, with Will Jordan, more than likely looking at that 15 jersey in Crusader land, but do they move him onto a wing to make way for Halfpenny? Just what's going to happen there is going to be fascinating. Julian Sevilla, obviously
100%.
at Moana Pacifica, the Force with a host of new Wallabies joining them and building really nicely. Who is your kind of team to beat that you saw from those squads?
Well, okay, so I'm going to break it down into sort of the unofficial two conferences, because I think it's worth looking at both. So for me, I think in New Zealand, it's always the Crusaders. The team to beat in New Zealand is always the Crusaders. They're the standard. Yes, they've lost Mwanga, but they still have an incredible squad there. And just for me, they are the standard for Super Rugby, for how much they win, how often they win, how many titles they have. The Crusaders, I think, are always the squad to beat. Within Australia, I want to highlight. Look, I think this is going to be a really strong year for Australian Super Rugby, because I think this could be the year the Melbourne Rebels actually make it into the final series. Like, I mean, it has to be with the signings that they've got this year. You know, Taniela Tupou is a huge one. You've got as well existing team members Kellaway. You've got Carter Gordon, right? Filippo Dongunu is another great winger as well. And there's just so much talent within Salakai Lotto. I was struggling to think of the name. Salakai Lotto, another really good experience forward to bring into that pack. This is a team that is Rob Leota. You know, this is a team that is poised to make a push, and we saw them last year. They pushed some teams, but they tended to collapse. I think now they've got a bit more of that experience in there. I think they've got what it takes to really be a top squad in the Australian side of things. I think the Waratahs have had some really good off-season additions. You know, I think the Queensland Reds will remain strong as they always do. Western Force have had some good signings as well, particularly Nick White, Ben Donaldson are some ones that stand out to me. If Reece-John Pasatoa can get healthy, maybe we could finally see him playing to his potential that he's been penciled in at for his entire career. So I think overall the standard should lift for Australia this year. But for me, the team to beat in Australia, much like the Crusaders, it's always the Brumbies. You know, the Brumbies are the team to beat in the Australian conference. They set the standard. You know, they've still got their great players. You know, Debrasini is stepping into a larger role. Lonergan is stepping into that primary halfback role. And they're not losing anything. Another year with Larkham. You know, I don't see them taking too much of a step back. You know, despite the loss of Nick White and some others, I still see this squad as being the standard for Australia.
Yeah, it's interesting though that Australian, as we're saying, conference, unofficial conference. It is. I agree with you. I think it's going to be the most competitive year. Like, you look at Australian rugby and you look at that Wallabies team, and I'm trying to think: is there a Wallabies player that they've lost that was playing Super Rugby pre-World Cup? I don't think so. Not from what I can remember. Then you look at the All Black side of things, and we've lost, 8 plus anyone else on a sabbatical. So I think it's about 12 all up that aren't going to be there. That's 12 All Blacks, that's 12 quality players.
Yeah.
And, yeah, like you said, the Crusaders may be the standard, but who's going to play fly half? I know Fergus Burke's out with an injury. They've brought a couple in. It's like stuff like that is going to be probably one of the more interesting things. New coach there, new dynamics. I look at a team like the Highlanders, who are quite clearly rebuilding, named a very youthful squad. Will be interesting to see how they go. It's never easy to go down there and win anyway, and they've got a passionate fan base. So I imagine they will top over some teams. But I think this could be the closest year of Super Rugby we've had in a very long time. I think, like you said, the Melbourne Rebels, if Carter Gordon can take that experience back from the World Cup as well. I know they signed Matt Proctor as well, so another, All Black experience. I just love what the Force have done over the past few years, and I think they're building well. Then you've got the Reds who, Les Kiss, the amount of stuff that has been talked up about him and his ability to coach. He's brought in Alex Hodgman and Jeffrey
Mm.
Tuamung-Allen, two former All Blacks. Alex Hodgman straight away becomes eligible for the Wallabies through apparently his dad, and he hasn't played for the All Blacks for 3 years. So I just sit there and I go, that's, front rows are so important in this game. And yeah, Queensland rugby looking really good. And then you can't obviously hide away from your Waratahs. I saw a photo of Will Harrison the other day looking in some of the best nick he's looked in since I've seen him come through. So if
Yeah.
he can stay healthy, with Donaldson leaving and Taine Image just the only kind of recognised first five, there's an opportunity there. So I just go, okay, cool. Fiji, Dura, looking really good. Haven't lost too many, like they haven't done the full rebuild what Moana Pacifica have done, which I think was necessary for Moana Pacifica. They lose a couple of key players, obviously Levi Amua, but with Tana
Mm.
Humunga now at the helm, it's just going to be really interesting to see how such a change of players, if they can kind of gel together so quickly. But yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I think for me, another player that I want to highlight is the much maligned Noah Lolosio, who's been overplaying in France, and I've seen a couple of his highlights pop on my feed recently. I think he's going to come back a much better player for that experience. I think whoever the next Wallabies head coach is going to be doing. I guess Eddie's really set the ground for a full reset and a full reassessment of everyone. So there's no weight being given to, oh, you played in the World Cup, you played under Eddie, because it's a totally different coach now, and that campaign was a disaster. So if anything, that might count against some of those players, whereas some of the players that weren't taken might have a few. Might just be able to say, "Hey, I wasn't part of that disaster. Look my way," kind of thing. So, I mean, we'll see how that goes. But I think Noel Olacia could have a very big year, and I think it's going to be very interesting to watch how he responds, because last year he was pushed basically by Jack Debrasini, and he was losing that battle. But now he's gone over to France. He's played with some of the best in the world in that level, learned from them. Let's see what he brings back. Let's see how he responds.
Totally. It'll be, yeah, his story will be really interesting. It's like you said, it's a clean slate for Australian rugby as far as I see it. Whoever comes in has a clean slate, so it'll be really interesting to see
Yeah.
what comes there. A player who did miss out in my mind, Lincoln McClutchy, from Moana Pacifica, not offered a Super Rugby contract, which is really interesting because I thought he is an up-and-coming first five, led the Hawke's Bay team to a final in the NPC over here in New Zealand, so a big name to miss out. I didn't notice too many Australian names. Obviously, you're not going to have many missing out
Yeah.
from Wallabies colours or Wallabies chances, and I imagine there'll be some youthful development coming through. You can already tell with the Waratahs themselves.
Yeah.
Wilson, coming through, will be right on Jake Gordon's heels, I imagine, this year.
Yeah, and another year under Jorgensen's belt, getting back and healthy and things like that. Miles Amatosero coming over from France, he's still very youthful, but a towering lock, which is great because that's something that the Waratahs have been desperately missing, and Australian rugby in general has been desperately missing. So to get him back will be incredible as well. I've got some high hopes for my Waratahs this year, but then again, I always do. So
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those years where a lot of teams go in with high hopes, and there's going to be some really tough games in there that'll define a season.
Waratahs were decimated by the end of the year. Though, by the time we got to finals, the back line was just people playing out of position all over the field. Like, it was just, yeah, I felt for them.
Yeah, totally. But I just think with the squad depth this year and what the Force have done, the Rebels have done, it's going to be one of those years where I just go, like, right now to predict it is very hard, very, very tough.
Yes.
I would say. Shall we talk about one specific Waratah that's captured the headlines?
It's for me, again, it's another one of these things that it's just rugby players talk to the NRL all the time. They're just captured on this because of the recent feuding. And look, I realistically don't see it as happening, because you've got a British and Irish Lions tour coming up in 2 years. You've got a home World Cup 2 years after that. Why would you go to NRL in that time? What are you going to do in the NRL in that time? As Jed Holloway said, you play up and down the east coast of Australia, and that's about it. And as well, for me, Mark's gone there to drive up his value to the Waratahs and to the Wallabies, and fair play to him. He should be a player in demand. He played well at the World Cup. He's a consistently good performer, so he should get the money that he deserves. So it's a business move. Realistically, I would be very surprised if this happened. I mean, he's even said he wants to stick with rugby, but there are other things that interest him, and you never know where the future might take him. But that for me sounds like after the World Cup. Why a home World Cup is a literally once in a lifetime opportunity. In fact, it's even rarer than once in a lifetime. Like there's some people that go their lifetimes without getting to play in one, and so I can't see that he would sacrifice that playing a World Cup in front of his family here at home. Why would you sacrifice that? He's still young, and then he can go to the NRL after that if he wants. So I think it's him establishing some connections for maybe post the 2027 World Cup.
And I can't see a team taking a big enough risk on someone who hasn't at least played rugby league recently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a big risk to take. I know he's a winger and wingers convert quite well. Like, it's an easy conversion, but it's just a big risk when you've got so many talented wingers in the game already to sit there and go, we're going to take on this young kid from.
It's all just part of this stupid code wars that shouldn't exist in the first place, because the rugby union and rugby league are not each other's enemies. We can help each other out. The real enemies are AFL and soccer, right? Yeah. Those are the ones that are taking kids away, because players can convert between codes, right? So if we completely drown one code, we take away a pathway, right? We take away a door into the sport, right? And we maybe send a kid to AFL or soccer instead. It's a lot harder for those kids to come back to rugby, right? So yeah, for me, it's egos by Volandis and Hamish McLennan and Nick Politis, and it's just a bunch of dumb old farts ruining the game for young people, much like politics and the state of the world. So it's just a microcosm of the macro there.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Marky's within his right to chat to anyone he wants.
Yeah,
but I don't even see him going like we're talking about a home World Cup, obviously in 2027, but then there's the excitement of a first ever World Cup in the USA and 2031. So it's like he's 22.
No, I think he's 25. 23. There you go. 23.
So yeah, 8 years time is only 31. Like, he's still knowing his work ethic, knowing his ability. At the moment, he could grow into one of the greatest Wallabies wingers of all time if he keeps going the way he is with trajectory. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just think
Wallabies are going to need to have a quality winger with Corabetti hanging up the boots.
Exactly. So he's got the world under his feet for the Wallabies there. But like you said, I think it's a discussion point where he can more than happily make those choices and decide. But I don't see it happening in the next 4 years when you've got British and Irish Lions. You've just got so much attractive stuff coming in. And I understand as well why the league would jump at this with obviously the Soali signing, but I tend to agree. I'm like, they've started talking about having salary cap for relief for taking stars, and I'm like, did we all?
So it's just cheating.
Do we all just witness the Wallabies World Cup, and is it that much that you think that those players need to be taken across to league? Like, they've got enough players themselves. However, they did obviously get pumped in the Pacific, Nations final against the Kiwis. But saying that, like, there's enough talent in Australia. You can't tell me.
Maybe it should be a bit of an ego check to league. It's like, tend to your own garden first before worrying about your neighbor. It's just dick swinging. It's just useless dick swinging, and I really, really hate it. They're all offended because Soali, who came up through rugby union, right, is gone back to rugby union for an incredible offer, and it's like, it just irritates me how much these egos take over the game when I'm sure the players would just happily play whatever.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this isn't obviously a discussion point in New Zealand as much. Like, there's the odd one where like an Ardie Sevilla or TJ Perenara have mentioned, I'd love to go and play for the Warriors. And there is no issues with that. Like, there is never why would you do that? It's like, if you've given your service to the All Blacks, if you've given your service to rugby league and you want to try something else or you want to take that opportunity there, why would we? We look at Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, who came across.
Yeah.
He wasn't blasted. Now he's not blasted for going back. He tried it, put on the black jersey, wouldn't have lived up to the hype, but to even put on the black jersey is just a sensation.
It's impressive. It's impressive. Yeah, exactly. It's because it's egos from the top down, and in this instance, Rugby Australia is as guilty as Australian Rugby League. It's just, yeah. And they all, and the whole argument about rugby union is it all old boys and rugby league is for like the workers. It's like, you can't seriously look at me and say that Peter V'landys, who's in charge of racing New South Wales, is just one of the workers, one of the lads. He's just as much of a rich boy as like a Hamish McLennan type.
Yeah, 100%.
So that old claptrap is just useless to say. And if Mark wants to go there after the World Cup, great. And with Suaalii, he's on his contract to the Roosters. He's playing out his contract to the Roosters. He hasn't tried to get out of it early or anything. He's doing it by the book, doing it respectfully. And yet we're still hearing all a big stink about it because, you know what, rugby league, at the end of the day, you just can't offer what rugby can, right? There's some things that money can't buy, like a British and Irish Lions tour, like a home World Cup. There's some things that you can't do, rugby league, and you just need to accept it at the end of the day. Just as equally as there's some things that Rugby Australia can't do, right? And, another example where we should be looking at how New Zealand handles such things and to just be calm, level-headed about it and not be dicks,
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Talking about actually Rugby Australia and Hamish McLennan, we'll get onto the centralisation topic. Phil Waugh's obviously as well come out and said we're not going to make any more plays for rugby league stars. We've got to obviously do this sustainably, which is all right. I get it, but my assumption would be if you are going to sign any more, it'll be a player leaving Australian rugby, so that contract opens up, and then a potential coming in type thing. So I'm not expecting any more signings as we may have under Eddie Jones, which honestly, what Phil Waugh is doing is incredible, absolutely fantastic. I think he's doing a fantastic job so far, putting himself out in the media, putting a strong stance of where he wants Australia rugby to go, what he's trying to achieve.
He's that level head that I was just talking about.
Totally. And has successfully got the Waratahs across the line and joining the centralisation program, which is a huge first step. Obviously one of the biggest clubs here in Australia. So,
and he's made the important guarantee that under centralisation, the ACT Brumbies would not move out of ACT, which was a concern of the Brumbies. And the reason there is that they're worried that if it all becomes centralised and controlled by Rugby Australia might make the decision that Canberra's not a big enough market and they'll move out of there. Now, the Brumbies is one of the strongest brands in rugby union, right? And even in Australian sports, totally, right? The Waratahs and the Brumbies are the two major ones in Queensland. Comes in third there, but even then, Queensland Reds, I would say probably a distant third behind the Waratahs and the Brumbies, right? Those are the two biggest ones, and I think you've got a really good rugby heartland there in Canberra and regional New South Wales. I don't know why you changed that. It's a fantastic place, and so, but they wanted that reassurance, and Phil Waugh's given that to them, which I think is really important.
Yeah, 100%. And now I know the Red CEO's come out and had a bit of a go at the idea, and isn't too fruitful, and has talked about the marketing that the Wallabies have done and this and that, which I understand there's some hesitant towards it because of how Rugby Australia has been run up until this point. But saying that, it's has your Super Rugby team succeeded before this?
Yeah.
No, not for the past 10 years. If you can't tell me that you've had success in, when 2011 was the last time I think Reds won, so let's say 10 years, if you haven't had a successful, last 10 years, and you can say, oh yeah, we won the Rugby Australia comp, well, that can be defined as success. But when you're looking at it as a global, and this is a global comp with New Zealand, Australia and Fiji, that's not success. So you can't sit there and say you've succeeded as well while Rugby Australia has failed, because in my mind, everyone's failed in Rugby Australia, including the clubs so far.
Look, they're one of the few clubs to have sort of financial success. So I guess from that point, that's where they're coming from, is that they've run a good business, and they don't want that business to go into hands that'll mismanage. So I understand hesitancy. I think it is incumbent on Rugby Australia to show these clubs and to provide the structure to say that this is what we're going to do, this is what we're changing, this is how we're going to succeed. And yeah, that's what I think Phil Ward is doing well. I think he will get there with this centralization. And the rebels and the force, I mean, they sort of have to sign on, because if Rugby Australia reduces, that one of them is going, right, and they don't want to be the one that's left out in the cold. So yeah, I think they'll get there. It's going to take a bit of work, but I expect that if he gets the Brumbies on board, then the Reds will come on board too.
Yeah, I think so too. And I back Phil Ward to do it from everything he's been saying and doing and keeping up at his end. I can't see it not happening. Moving on to the Club World Cup discussions. There is discussions for a Club World Cup, which I actually love this idea. I think it would be really fascinating. I know the Crusaders are playing like Munster and for someone over in February. On a two-off, just a two-off game as they head over and do a bit of a tour. But I just think this would be a really cool idea to get some of those teams playing against each other. I don't know where it fits into the schedule, but I would love to see, the Hurricanes versus Munster, or the Crusaders versus Stade Francais or Toulon or whatever.
Yeah,
it's just
I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah,
I think it's cool. I think it maybe you have during the Super Rugby season. We know we have bye weeks now. Why don't we have a bye period during the middle of the season, 2 weeks where, and then one of those weeks the clubs go over and play another club or something like that, or you do it pre-season, post-season. I'm sure they can figure it out.
Yeah, they'll fit it in. They'll fit it into the calendar. I guarantee that. I guess the questions will be, how seriously do the teams take it? Like,
yeah,
are you going to go out and try and win this? Are you playing your starting lineup? Are you playing heavy? And then B, I guess the logistics of it working. How many teams make it? Like, it would be really cool if we're playing with 8 teams in a playoff in Super Rugby. If you said the top 4 teams or the top 3 teams make the Club World Cup, qualify for the Club World Cup, that would be really cool and give some incentive then to be pushing up that and say it was the top 4 teams. So you have the top 4 from here, you have the top 4 from like the URC, the top 4 from top 14 and top 4 from the Premiership. That's 16 teams come in, play a pool. I don't know how it'll work, but it might even be top 2 and you just go straight into quarters, things like that. But again, just something to incentivize finishing up higher up the table. So those last games, you're not resting players or doing anything. You're actually having to compete to try and get those top 4 spots, which would make Super Rugby more interesting, which is great. All Blacks eligibility. Now, this is obviously, we've come up, it's discussed a lot. The G'day law, we actually haven't discussed it that often recently because they've been a bit more lenient as they went into the World Cup. But now the World Cup has ended, Eddie's reign has ended, albeit brief. I'm interested to see what Aussie Rugby do. I'm interested to see what New Zealand Rugby do. Obviously, in New Zealand Rugby, you have to be playing Super Rugby or go on a sabbatical, but you can't play the All Blacks while you're on that sabbatical. And it's another exodus for the All Blacks after the World Cup. And a player like, again, I said it took a young player coming up potentially in their prime, Lester Whanganuku, has headed over to France. I think he's like 24 years old, just kind of coming into his prime. Signed a 2-year deal, so there's chances he'll be back for the World Cup. I know Razor will be in touch with him, but it does open up this question that, do we let players now play from all over the world and play for the All Blacks? I'm starting to get more to yes, but I just need some insurances as well that it's not going to hurt Super Rugby too much. I still think it's stupid. Like you look at football, and the best English player in the moment, Jude Bellingham, plays for a Spanish team. Does England care about that? No, they just wanted him to be able to play for England and win. So it's one of those points. I like the idea of at least setting up a deal with Japan and going, anyone who plays in Japan can play for the All Blacks, because it's not, you could get a squad together in Japan pretty quickly and everything like that. It's not the end of the world, and I think it'll build relationships in that part of the world. I just think, the effort to get someone back from France and stuff like that and all of that would be interesting. I really don't have an answer. I don't see there being an insurance policy to say this won't hurt Super Rugby.
Yeah. I'm sure they can put in some extra clauses around the eligibility and stuff about how you qualified to be able to play overseas and for the All Blacks. I'm sure they'll work it out, but I think it's eventually going to have to happen, because the money is elsewhere at the moment. It is France and Japan. So unless Super Rugby blows up again, which we hope and pray for, then it's not going to be those top line players are going to look for money elsewhere, which you can't blame them for.
100%. And I'm the same. I go, Lesia Whanganuku, you can't blame him for choosing the French money, setting himself up, probably getting just about under $1 million a year to play footy. It's just stupid that you wouldn't do that. All right, to finish us off today, Hughesy, I'm going to put you under the radar, and I'm running you through a World Cup quiz, my friend. I've made it not easy. So
I'm probably going to fail then.
Yeah. But we'll see how you go. There's 20 points all up, all right? So a pass mark is obviously 10.
I'm not gonna pass.
The last one is heavily favoured, so there's 16 points on offer, which I think you could get. I think that's just an interesting one. So we'll see how you go. So the first question, my friend, who scored the first try of the Rugby World Cup in 2023?
Fuck me. That is a good one. So it's France versus New Zealand.
Yeah, there you go. So now you've cut it down to 30 players.
Yeah, cutting it down to 30 players. God, did France and New Zealand score first in that? I'm gonna say France scored first, and was it Ramos, the fullback for France?
It was not, my friend. New Zealand scored first. Mark Talia in the corner. So yes, good trying to work it out. It was a tough one.
Yeah,
I make it honest. That's the one of the two only New Zealand questions in here. For your Australian question,
okay,
who was the top try scorer for Australia?
Top try scorer for Australia. It's going to be someone I don't expect. Trying to think who scored the tries for Australia. So
there's probably a few actually. I should probably say this. I've got the one that came up first on the list, but
I'm gonna say, oh God. Okay, so take me back to the games. All right, so Australia versus Georgia, then it was Australia versus Fiji, then Australia versus Wales, and Australia versus Portugal. Oh, Portugal. We could have scored a few in that Portugal game that would that might throw my calculations. But if I remember right, Australia versus Georgia, Donaldson scored 2 in that one, and I don't know if anyone else scored multiples. In the game against Fiji, I think we only kicked penalties. I don't think we scored any tries in that game. Again, I could be wrong, but okay. And against Portugal, I'm not sure who scored in that one. I'm going to go with Ben Donaldson.
So there's 2 answers. I went back and checked it. It was Ben Donaldson and Mark Nawangandituase. Both scored 2 tries.
There you go.
So
it not particularly spectacular showing, but my memory served me well there.
So there you go. 1 from 2 at the moment. There was a game in the Rugby World Cup where New Zealand's hearts were in their sleeves because they were playing Italy. Realistically, a spot in the quarterfinals after having lost to France. What was the final score of that game?
That is a very good question. He didn't put up 100. He's in the 90s. High 90s or low 90s, though? Is it 94-12?
Oh, 96-17.
Nah.
Very close. Very good. Very good memory. So that's 1 from 3, but that's all right because the last question is obviously where it all comes in. So the one before that, question 4. How many tries did South Africa score in the Rugby World Cup final and semi-final combined?
0, right? It was all penalties, right? Am I correct in that? I need to no, because they won by 1 point.
Do you want to lock that in?
I'm not. That's not my final
Okay.
answer. So in the final and semi-final combined,
Both of them, yep. And final against the All Blacks, semi-final against England.
no, it's not 0. They definitely scored a try. Just one against England, right?
Correct. 1.
Yes.
Yep. 1. RG
It
Snyman.
was right at the end. It was Etzebeth, right?
No, Snyman.
No.
The other big lock, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
But yep. Just a 1.
Yeah.
So 2 from 4 so far, and we come to the money question.
Yeah.
Now, I reckon you'll probably be able to get 3 or 4 of these, which would tip you over. But there were 8 red cards in total in Rugby World Cup 2023. You get a point for naming each player and the team they play for. Okay.
Sam Cane, New Zealand. I know that one. Straight off the bat, I know that one. Fuck. That's... God, I'm totally blanking now. No. Did Namibia get one against France for when they broke Dupont's face?
Did.
I can't name the player though. But I can name the country.
Take that.
Someone else got one but won a game, and I'm trying to think who it was.
I think you're thinking of the one really early in the tournament.
Yeah. England. England got one, and against Argentina, where it was all the drop goals, wasn't it?
Correct.
Fuck, who got the red card? Was it Billy Vunipola got the red card?
No,
he got a pre-World Cup. Pre-World Cup, yep. I don't know who got it from England.
Right. So you got 4 at the moment, 4 points. Need 4 more.
I don't know if I'm going to get the other 4. I can't recall any of the other ones. To be perfect. Wait. Was there one in the South Africa versus Ireland game, or was it just a yellow card?
There wasn't a red. I don't even know.
It wasn't red. Okay. It's a... I don't know. I don't know any of the rest of it. I can't even think. I just... I know Australia got cards. I don't think we ever got a red though.
Correct, you didn't.
Yeah.
So you need 4
Fiji
more points.
Get a red?
No, but 2 other island nations did.
Or Samoa and have got one then in Tonga.
Yep. Okay. Do you know who got them for them?
No, couldn't.
And
couldn't
the last one I'm going to give you, obviously my home country also got another red card in the tournament.
Got another? New Zealand got another one?
Mm-hmm. Right at the end of a game.
Was that the end of the France game at the start? Did they get one against France? No.
I believe it was Namibia.
Oh. I couldn't tell you, to be honest.
Unfortunately, Husey, you have failed the Rugby World Cup quiz, but it was a very good effort, I must say. I remember I was writing this and I was like, I'll be impressed if you get enough. So you got Johan Dijssel, Namibia. He was the one against France. Sam Cane, New Zealand. Tom Curry was the English one.
Ah, okay.
Vincent Pinto got one from Portugal.
Who did he get that against? Was that against Wales?
Don't even know. Wouldn't have a clue. That was one I would have never got. I wouldn't have got this one as well. Desiderius Sefe from Namibia got one. Baia Fafita for Tonga got one. Those 3 I probably would have struggled to get. Ethan de Groot's head-on-head contact against Namibia got a red card.
Really?
Yeah, right at the end of the game. He came off the bench. And the last one was a dumb one, Ben Lam for Samoa.
Yes.
Against Japan. Just kind of ended their tournament a little bit early there. So yeah, those were the 8 red cards handed out. Husey, hell of an effort, but unfortunately, you go home with no money.
That's all right. That was a tough quiz. Yeah, those were tough. The red card ones. I was happy that I got the France versus Namibia one. I mean, the Sam Cane one is no one's ever going to forget that one. But after that, I was struggling.
Yeah, I thought you would have got that Namibia, Sam Cane, Tom Curry, Ethan de Groot potentially, and Ben Lamb.
Yeah, England. I was like, I couldn't remember who it was from England, but I knew that someone got red, and it was relatively early in that game that they got the red, but they just kept doing getting the drop goals.
Yeah, your memory does remember, but not enough to win the quiz, unfortunately. But that's all right. We'll be back again another time and test your memory again. But for now, that is us all wrapped up. It's been a really, really interesting week for the world of rugby. I'm sure we're going to get a very interesting one again this week. I am getting heavily into the Premiership because that's the only rugby I have on at the moment. And it's just interesting to see European rugby versus, Southern Hemisphere rugby on TV and stuff, and watching games like that. But I might do a bit of a recap of that next podcast just to keep us all in the loop what's happening, what I'm seeing over here as I watch the highlights. Anything else going on in your world, mate, for the rugby?
Not for rugby, just for NFL. Steelers are winning record.
Yeah, there you go.
So happy about my helmet back there. So.
I avoid talking about the NFL at the moment, but
I would. I would if I were you.
Alrighty, thank you for joining us on That Rugby Podcast today. My name has been Luke. That has been Husey. We will catch you next time. Goodbye.
Peace.